There's a saying that goes, we're paying a great price, and we're paying a great price for it. And Dick, that's what our subject is about today. In fact, in Proverbs 22:7 it says, "For the rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender." And what is the great price that we're paying?
You're not talking about interest rates now.
I'm not talking about interest rates, but you're close, because they are tied together. We're paying a great price, but we're also paying a great price for it. And it has to do with debt. And do you know what the great price we're paying is?
I can think of the fact that 75% of divorces have something to do with problems
with
money.
finances. How about people who commit suicide because they have investments that go down the tubes?
That's right.
How about people that have nervous breakdowns because
Stress.
of financial stress? How about people that just basically their health falls apart because they are not being able to cope with the financial difficulties they've gotten themselves into?
I was in a Sabbath school class one time, Jeff, and for some reason the subject was slavery, and it was referencing slavery in the Bible.
It's long past.
And yeah, that's what the teacher said. It was long past until I raised my hand. And I said, no, we have slavery in the 21st century. It's called debt.
Really?
Because that text you read, it says, the rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant. And let's put the word there. The borrower is the slave to the lender.
That's right.
Have you ever noticed how when you get in the mail these little solicitations to get a credit card?
Have I ever noticed? I only notice it probably about every other day, maybe 2 or 3 of them.
I read somewhere that they're sending out billions of those solicitations each year. But when you read it, it's very affirmative. It just builds your self-esteem. It says, you're a blah, blah, this good credit and everything else. And it gets you so excited that you sign up for the card. But then if you don't make the payments, as we would say, they blow your kneecaps off. So and so you're their hero one day and you're the enemy the next.
Or you read the fine print and you say it starts off with 0% interest for the first 90 days. And then it jumps up to 19%. Talking about credit card debt, listen to this. It says that right now that personal debt in America has doubled in the last 10 years to a whopping $1.98 trillion. This is a statistic from October 2003. And then the national credit card debt in the United States has come to $735 billion, or nearly $7,000 per household.
Amazing.
But that stat is not really very accurate, because they go on and qualify when they did this research. They say, but 40% of the people who have credit cards pay them off every month. So per capita, debt is more like $12,000 per household on a credit card.
Interesting. Do you know, have you thought that modern advertising makes Jesus out a liar? Because
What's
remember,
Jesus have to do with modern advertising?
Watch this. Jesus said, a man's life consisteth not in the abundance of that which he possesseth.
Okay.
And advertising is saying, you need a new suit, you need a new car, you need a new house.
You can't be happy unless you have this.
You can't be happy unless you buy.
Life is really in the abundance of things that you have.
It's exactly the opposite of what Jesus said.
It's really interesting as you listen to the radio, and they come up with something about some new thing you can buy. And at the end, they have this voice that goes, 60%, and it stops and it goes on to the next advertisement.
And it's basically saying, again,
it's the fine print that you hear.
If you don't pay this off, you're in big trouble, or it's not really what we're representing it to be.
That's right.
Have you thought that debt might be breaking the 10th commandment?
That makes sense, because what is the 10th commandment? Some people don't even know what the commandments are. We're talking about the 10 commandments, the law of God.
Right. The 10th commandment said, thou shalt not covet. So really, going back to advertising, now I know people have to make their living selling things, but modern advertising is basically creating, now should I say desire or should I say greed?
I think they go hand in hand.
I think, in other words, this advertising comes along and suddenly I'm not satisfied with what I've got. I've got to have something else. I begin to covet what my neighbor has. I say, I've got to have a car like they've got. I've got to have a house like they've got.
Incredible amount of pressure. I mean, even with kids, they watch certain commercials and they come to their mom and dad and said, well, can we get a new Xbox, or can we get a new PlayStation, or can we get this toy or this gizmo or something? And then the parents say, well, we really can't afford it. That's not really a wise. But Tommy's parents bought them one.
That's right.
And so in desperation, maybe not being able to really be able to afford that, they resort to the credit card.
I can remember, I was just looking at you. I don't think you look quite as old as I am. I think it was when we came back from overseas. It must have been in the late 60s. Now, I'm not sure when it was that the credit card thing started. Now, there were credit cards that would be associated with a local department store. I think that was always there. But I remember layaway. Do you remember that word?
Oh, yeah.
Put stuff on layaway. In other words, if you had $1 or $2, you could go pick out a suit and you would put it on layaway and you would get it when it was paid off. In other words, credit...
It's actually a pretty good system.
Well, it kept people out of debt. We didn't have what we couldn't afford to buy.
It wasn't buy now, pay later. It was pay now and get it later.
Or you wouldn't have it. And you know, this has changed the way we live, because I was telling someone the other day, I remember when I was growing up, I didn't have a closet full of clothes. I didn't have 30 shirts. I had my school clothes and I had my Sabbath clothes. I had school shoes and Sabbath shoes. But credit has made it possible for us to have all kinds of things. Now, has it raised our standard of living? I suppose it has. But if it's added quantity to our life, it is surely what we have in quantity, we've lost in quality.
Yeah, I remember a story, and this story has been repeated over and over and over again, especially in the United States and some parts of Europe, of a young couple who graduate from college. And of course, when you graduate from college, what do you have? College debt, right?
Right.
And then they're married and they're a young couple and they're looking for their career now because they've just graduated from college. And the husband lands a pretty decent job and starts having a certain amount of income. And then the wife goes out to work because they don't have any children yet, and she's got her career and she's involved with different things, and they decide they want to buy a house. Well, first thing they decide is they need an automobile. But because they both work, they need 2 automobiles. So they go out and buy 2 automobiles, but yet they're living within their budget, you see.
Right.
But what they didn't figure out was the interest on the car.
Exactly.
And they didn't figure out the fact that they have to pay full coverage insurance on both cars because the banks own the cars and they don't. Plus they have their school loans. But that's no problem. They're living within their means. And then they decide, well, you know, it'd be better to have equity in a home rather than renting. So then they go buy a house. But then after they buy a house, they have interest on their house, and then they add to that the fact that they have to have full coverage insurance, fire insurance to their house. And then they have an empty house, so they go to one of the local department stores and they get a card there, and they put all new furnishings in it, and next thing you know, they've maxed themselves right out to the top of their income, so that they're living only on just a little bit of money left over, you know, to get by every month. And then the husband loses his job.
That's right.
Or maybe the wife has a baby. And all of a sudden, you know, she's either stuck with the thing, you know, do I put the child in daycare, or do I stop my job? If I stop my job, how are we going to pay the bills? And they start having a financial crisis. And it just takes one straw to break the proverbial camel's back. And then what ends up happening is that financial stress sets in. And this is what you were talking about, where 70% of divorces are oftentimes stemming from financial crisis within the home. And we see this happen over and over again with young people.
Well, too, you know, I was talking with a realtor one time, and they were remarking about houses, and they said they had actually seen houses that were really nice, but no furniture inside because they could only afford to make the payment. Or really nice houses, but they can't afford to run the air conditioner. In other words, getting totally maxed out. Now, you know, Jeff, somebody might say, well, I'm not sure. I might have some problems as being an overspender, but I really don't know. You know, I came across a little questionnaire, and it asks some questions, and we could even ask these questions and ask our viewers to kind of listen to this and kind of grade themselves, because if you answer yes to 2 or more of these questions, then you're an overspender.
Dick, do I have to answer these questions on the air?
We're going to ask the cameraman not to put the camera on your face, because if you're grimacing or you're blinking or something like that,
nodding
or nodding or twitching, we'll know that you're guilty. The first question is, are you presently making only minimum payments on large balances? That's the first question. If so, are you still using that credit card to make even more purchases that you can't pay off? Number 3, do you use one credit card to pay off another? You know, a lot of people do that.
Is this called the recipe for disaster?
It sounds like it. Number 4, do you lie or try to hide your credit card purchases from loved ones? This begins to be denial. This sounds a little bit like alcoholism. Number 5, are you behind or delinquent in your payments? Number 6, do you use more than one credit card and run balances greater than what you can afford to pay off each month?
No, I know people, what they do is they get one credit card and they charge up a bunch of stuff on it, and then they go to another credit card to pay that one off. And
they're juggling.
Yeah, and they're juggling constantly.
Number 7, do you live in fear of creditors? Number 8, do you make large purchases before spending any time thinking about them? Number 9, if you had the chance to pay with cash or a credit card, is your first choice a credit card? And number 10, are you counting on winning the lottery to pay off your bills? You know, there's some people that actually do that.
Oh.
And then it says, if you answered yes to more than 2 questions, you're an overspender.
And I think we live in a society that's bent on overspending. Dick, I want to tell you something, but I don't want to tell you who I'm talking about. It's this young lady I know, and I don't want to give away who she is, but she's genetically related to me.
All right.
But I don't really want you to know,
That's
who I'm
exactly
talking about, because she lives with us.
I was going to say, you don't want to make your daughter too mad at you here.
Yeah, well, let's be careful here how we handle this. But when she was out on her own, she kind of dug herself into this hole. She didn't kind of dug herself in a hole. She dug herself in a hole. And she went and got a local merchant card from one of the department stores, bought a colored TV set, bought a, this, what do they call them now, entertainment center, the whole thing with the stereo and everything. She had car payments, she had rent payments. So people that were living with her were not helping pay for their share of the rent. And then she had car problems, so she put the stuff on the credit card, and then she lost her job.
Oh my.
And talk about the creditors hounding her. Phone calls coming. She moved back home. She was in a desperate situation, and we had to work with her in going to what they call credit counseling so that she could consolidate all her loans and work it off. By God's grace, she's almost completely out of debt today.
Wonderful.
But how many people out there that are watching this program that have buried themselves? And I thought, well, this is just young people, but I've listened to some radio talk show programs, and I hear people who are on Social Security and they have credit cards, and they've gotten themselves in the same kind of financial predicament because they can't make ends meet. So they can't make ends meet. What do? They go to the credit card.
Do you know there are companies, not-for-profit companies, that are counselors that will help you to get out of debt, and they do it without charge, and they negotiate this. Now, there are other companies that will charge you a fee. Now, look out for that. If there's someone that says, we're going to help you get out of debt, but you've got to go into debt to us to do it, those wouldn't be the ones to go to, because there are not-for-profit companies, and they won't charge you anything. In fact, I think the way it works is the credit card company in some way helps them along, because they know in many times that the alternative is a bankruptcy.
Yeah. And that's a better alternative than a bankruptcy.
And so what these plans will do is that they'll make the interest disappear. And so that in a way we can begin to dig out.
Let's take a quick break, Dick. You're watching Laymen Ministries Crosstalk. We'll be back in just a moment.
Laymen Ministries bookstore carries hundreds of books, Bibles, resource materials, videotapes, and audio tapes, all at discounted prices. To receive your free catalog, write or call Laymen Ministries, 414 Zapada Road, St. Mary's, Idaho, 83861, or call 1-800-245-1844.
Dick, in dealing with this whole issue of debt, or what we call buy now, pay later, there's an interesting Bible verse.
Or pay never.
Or pay never,
right.
Or go into bankruptcy, yeah. There's an interesting Bible verse in Hebrews 13, verse 5, and it says, "Be ye free from the love of money." Maybe it should say, "Be ye free from the love of gadgets on television and on advertising." But be ye free from the love of money, content with such things as ye have. And this is the problem with modern advertising. It's making people discontent.
That's right.
You can't be happy
That's
unless
right.
you have more and more and more. And let's face it, there's a lot of cool gadgets. There's gadgets out there I would like to have. But we have to learn to live within our, what?
Within our means.
Within our means.
Have you learned to enjoy the blessings of thrift stores?
We go to thrift stores from time to time.
You know,
I'll be honest with you, I'm really German. We just don't go to stores a lot, period.
You know, I have found, and I was talking in a meeting the other day, I mentioned that some people say, well, you know, my suit here, I paid $5,000 for it. It's a name brand.
Come on.
Now, well, I'm exaggerating.
Okay.
But if somebody said that to me, I would say, you were gypped. In other words, I would feel better not about saying I spent $5,000, but saying I spent $5. I got it at a thrift store. You know, there was a time in which here in the United States we didn't recycle hardly. Now overseas they were recycling all the time. I think it started with the garage sale, and then I think it went flea market. Now it's thrift stores, and you know, the trash and treasure. And in fact, they give all kinds of names to these. But you know, there's lots of money to be saved.
Well, a lot of people, they'll say,
wonderful things to be bought.
Dick, that's not cool.
You know, a person says, well, I wouldn't wear used clothes. I would say, well, you go buy new ones, but the minute you put it on, it happens to be used. Your closet's only got used clothes in it. So who do I care? You know, who's worn it before?
I wished I would have listened to my father when I was younger, because my father was the what I call old school way of thinking. He was the kind of guy that never bought anything unless he could afford to buy it. He saved up at least 2/3 of whatever it was, and then maybe he got a small loan at a low interest rate from the bank to buy something. But he was the kind of guy that budgeted himself completely every month. You could go back through his financial diaries, and you could see every time he spent 5 cents on this or 25 cents on that, or he bought an oil filter for the car, and he did that. I didn't learn that. And when I was younger, I was spendthrifty, and I ended up, I think I told you on one of a program that we did a long time ago that I used to really be into antique cars, and I became a caraholic.
All right.
And I had like 15 cars.
Oh, my land.
You know, when I was trying to restore them, these were all pre-1940 cars, and we got in debt, and the debt was getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and we had some friends that sit down with us, and they said, Jeff, do you believe that God could provide you and your family a home in the country where you could own your own piece of property or in your own home? And I said, he said, do you believe that that's God's will for you? And I said, well, yeah, if it's God's will for you, don't you think he could do it? And I said, yeah, but, you know, I got some debt. And this friend started counseling with me. And you know one of the things that he told me? It was really painful. He said, Jeff, you need to get rid of some of your toys.
And by that, he was talking about all those cars.
He's talking about selling off some of those cars. And one by one, I started to cut loose, because sometimes getting out of debt is not a painless experience.
Absolutely.
You have to sacrifice some things that are dear to your heart.
And
one car I sold, 1936 Plymouth Coupe, I cried when the person drove it away.
But I think that you kind of intimated that these kinds of things can be a kind of an addiction.
Oh, absolutely.
A person becomes a compulsive buyer. Have you noticed that you had referenced early this I want it now generation? I noticed, and I don't want to embarrass our children, but when Betty and I married, what was that, 100 years ago or 50 years ago, or whatever
come
it was.
on, it was only about 20 years ago.
When Betty and I married, we didn't start where our parents left off. We had to start at the bottom and work up from there. But my kids, they live like it took us 30 years to live. In other words, they start off with 2 new cars. They start off with their houses. They start off with so much, but they do it by loading themselves with debt.
After I liquidated everything and we got completely out of debt, I had some actual cash asset, and we put a down payment on our piece of property. My wife and I decided that we weren't going to pay for anything or buy anything unless we could pay cash for it. And we scraped and we saved, and there was a couple times that we borrowed just a small amount of money to help buy a car or something like that, but it was well within our means. You know, getting in debt's not a sin, but we need to make sure that when we do debt, that we do it within a large safety zone of our means, so that in case some kind of situation comes up that's out of our control, that we can still make our payments. And the best thing, of course, is to be debt-free. Jesus said, do you remember what Jesus said?
Oh, no man anything.
Yeah, but love.
Do you know, I have probably lived at a lower standard in the last 20 years than I might have. My wife and I have worked, both of us, we've had 2 incomes through those years, but I've kind of lived at the standard of 1 income, with this always in the back of my mind, what if one of us goes out of work? And so I think that protects us. Now, I might as well make a confession, because you're talking about paying cash and saving. Everything I buy, Jeff, I buy with my credit card. Everything I buy. But guess what?
You shouldn't be on this program.
I pay it off every month.
Well, you're one of the 40% that we talked about in statistics.
And I guess that the credit card companies have names for us, and they're not real good names, because we're the ones that they hope, are not out there. Because we're getting into kind of a cashless society.
Yeah. Some good advice, though. It is possible to get out of debt, but it's not always going to be a painless process.
No, that's right.
And my counsel for people is to, if they have credit card debt, to concentrate all their efforts. Even if, like my daughter, she had this brand new, this like entertainment center, and I told her we have to take it back. She had a 60-day return policy, and she only had it for 30 days. We have to take it back. And she said, no, and she started crying. I said, we need to take it back. And she said, okay, and we took it back. And that was the first step. And I think that by learning to economize, by learning to buy in bulk, that's what my wife and I started doing, looking for thrifty deals, not spending above our means, and then being content with what we have. I have a few toys, Dick, I'll be honest with you.
I think you must tell our viewers that you do have 1 car left.
Well, I do have 1 car that my son and I restored, but here's the thing, is with whether it's a car or any other kind of toy I buy. Some people go out and they just pay retail because they want it and they get it.
Right.
The German part of me that my dad indoctrinated me with is that when I buy, I make sure that I buy as a super good deal, so that when I decide to get rid of the toy, it's an investment so that I can sell it for more than what I had into it.
If somebody says, you know, I got a watch here and it's a $25,000 watch. No, you may have paid $25,000, but it's not worth $25 until you can sell it for $25.
That's right.
And so a lot of people are actually being told that they're buying collectibles. They may not be collectibles.
That's right.
They may be just making money for somebody.
Yeah, the person needs to know what they're doing. They need to be careful.
Do you know, I saw an interesting way to save money. Now, I don't think you've ever heard how to save money this way. It'll not only save money, but it'll help you lose weight. Can I share this with you?
This is kind of like if you quit smoking, you can add up how many cigarettes.
Now, just listen to this.
How much money
now, just listen to this.
Okay.
If a person will pass up potato chips in their lunch every day, they can save $176.80 and a whopping 63,232 calories.
That's on a given. They eat potato chips every day.
That's on a given. What, you know, a lot of people have just a little
bag of potato chips.
A little bag of potato chips. If we give up fries every day, we can save 40 pounds of potential fat, 140,400 calories, and we can save $533 a year. Now, you see, these are the frivolities: a cheeseburger, large fries, one slice of cheese pizza. For example, if we could give up one slice of cheese pizza a day, we could lose 23 pounds. We could save $650, and if you want to invest that, and you were able to get 10% interest, you know, which I'd like to find these days, we could have, after 10 years, $11,000, or after 20 years, $41,000, all from going and
it's almost hard to believe, isn't it?
See?
But listen, if we lived in a city, like you live in a city area, right?
Right.
Think how many people go to work and then lunch hour comes, they rush down to the local fast food place and they buy a lunch and they spend $5.60. Easy. And they do that 5 days a week. Some people 6 days a week.
That's right.
You start adding that up. At the same time, they have a credit card debt that they need to pay off. If they would quit buying the fast food and then they would accumulate that money and put it towards the principal on their credit card and get rid of the interest and the charges on the credit card, you could even make these statistics
you
higher.
can even do better than that. You know, it's even mentioned a cup of coffee. You know, they're making exotic coffees.
Oh, there's lattes and different things.
It's not just 50 cents or 25 cents.
No, like $2.50 or something.
Just by saving that, what is it, mocha latte or what? I can't even pronounce
mocha
it.
Latte.
Mocha
there
latte.
You go, Dick.
It's $793 a year. By the way,
how much?
$793.
If you just don't drink a mocha every day.
Yeah, exactly.
So some people would have a hard time giving that one up.
So there's savings. There's savings to be made. You know, I've heard that a person who's really in debt should list all of their debts, and rather than to attack the highest debt first, attack the lowest. Have you heard that one?
Yes.
In other words, we should pay off from the bottom. And pay it all off. And as that shrinks, then that gives us more muscle to attack some of these bigger things.
You said something earlier in the program that the bottom line was the violation of the 10th commandment. And so this really comes back to an issue of morality in a sense, because we're talking about the moral law. And I really believe that we need to quit being duped by advertising.
That's exactly right.
And that we need to allow God to eradicate this selfishness in our hearts, the selfishness of thinking that we're not happy in this, we can get something more. We can learn to get by without the latest gadget if we need to.
Absolutely.
You know, we can get by with having our life be a lot more simple.
You know, I really believe...
In fact, we can get by with liquidating some of the things that we have that we don't need.
I believe that there's more fun, shall we say, in anticipating something than in actually getting it. Now, you hear where I'm coming from?
Oh,
sometimes saving for something is almost more fun than actually getting it.
A good example of that is when a person has to save up money for something and then they go down and pay cash for it, they have a deeper appreciation for what they've gotten.
Absolutely.
You know, there's the anticipation, which makes it more exciting, but they have a deeper appreciation, and you find that they usually take better care of whatever they bought. Where if you get things just like that, you just go buy it, a lot of times people don't even have it paid off on their credit card by the time it's broken.
But, you know, what we're talking about, this instant gratification, this is not only immaterial and leads us into debt, this gets us into trouble in our marriages. This idea that, well, I'll live with somebody, you know, and I'm just going to do as I want. I'm going to get physically intimate. This generation wants whatever it wants, and it wants it now, whatever the cost. And I think that we started the program off by saying that we're paying an enormous price. The price we're paying is broken homes. The price we're paying is stress. It's health problems. It's all kinds of conflicts. It's affecting our relationships with our children. Obviously, if parents are having to work 2 or 3 jobs, what time do they have for their children? And so ultimately we could argue, well, the reason I've got so many jobs is because it's for my children's sake. Yeah. Well, that can be a sword that has 2 edges.
That could be a cop-out or an excuse to cover up other desires and covetousness.
Well, it might even be sincere. But if I'm working so hard for the sake of my children that I don't even have time for my children, or I never see my children, I'm working day and night, what am I doing for my children?
Hey, Dick, hopefully when we get older, we get wiser. Some people don't.
That's right.
Some people get older and you sometimes wonder if they maybe get more stupid. But the older I've gotten, I like to think that I've gotten a little bit wiser, that I've learned some lessons from my mistakes in the past. And one of the things I honestly can see that validates what we're talking about here is that my wife struggled and scraped and sacrificed to get to the point where we are today. And we are pretty much debt-free except for we have a car payment. And I see other young people who maybe get to know us, or they get to know other families that are our age that have worked up to owning a house and different things, and they're like looking at us saying, well, they have those things, we have the right to have them too. And so they automatically think that they have the right to be able to have what we have without taking into consideration it took us 40-something years or 30-something years to get to where we were at, because we had to work and sacrifice to get to that point. And it just feeds this mentality of what you're talking about, is that we live in I want it now generation.
Well, you know, it's interesting, you living out here in the country in the hills of Idaho, you know, this expression.
We don't have a lot of malls to go to and spend money.
I was going to say, well, not even that, keeping up with the Joneses. The Joneses only live about 50 miles away, and so you don't know what their latest car or boat is.
That is one of the benefits of country living. Dick,
it's a simpler life.
If you had just a closing thought to share with somebody that maybe is struggling with debt right now, what would you say?
I would say maybe it's a spiritual thing, and it would be, you know, like the Apostle Paul said, that I've determined in whatever state I'm in to be content. And so this isn't meaning that God doesn't want us to raise our standard of living, but we have to start from contentment, and then probably the growth that we have will be reasonable, and it will not put the rest of our aspects of our life in danger.
Amen. Like it says in Hebrews 13:5, this is from the ASV, it says, be free from the love of money or the love of gadgets and everything else, content with such things as ye have. We're glad you were with us with this edition of Laymen Ministries Crosstalk. If you'd like to be part of this program and this ministry, feel free to write or call us at Laymen Ministries. That's 414 Zapada Road, St. Mary's, Idaho, 83861, or call our toll-free number at 1-800-245-1844. You can contact us on the web at www.lmn.org.